Tonight, the mystery of Flight 8501. They're searching an area bigger than California for the missing Air Asia jet. With families desperate for word, there's a call for U.S. help. Reports from Alan Pizzi and Jeff Pegues. Trapped for 30 hours on a burning ferry.
Okay, it was a panic. It was crazy.
Elizabeth Palmer tells us at least 10 are dead, but hundreds were rescued. A top House Republican admits he spoke at a gathering of white supremacists. Wyatt Andrews is on the story. And
these three right here, I'm not happy with.
Seth Doan with butlers in training in a place you wouldn't expect.
This doesn't seem like Mao's communist China.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley.
Good evening. Scott is off. I'm Norah O'Donnell. Tonight, the search is expanding for a missing Air Asia flight. By all indications, this is a third tragedy to hit that part of the world this year. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 vanished in March. Flight 17 was shot down over Ukraine in July. And now Flight 8501. The Airbus A320 with 162 people on board left Indonesia this past weekend, headed for Singapore. It vanished shortly after the captain made a request to change course because of threatening weather. We begin our coverage tonight in Singapore with Alan Pizzi. Alan?
Good evening, Nora. Well, Indonesia has asked the U.S. Navy for help in the search, and the Navy has said it is in discussions to send ships and submersibles to comb the waters south of Belitung Island. Anxious relatives huddled together for comfort and checked the list of the missing. Days after the aircraft disappeared in the Java Sea, hope is all they have. One woman wandered around looking stunned, holding a photograph of a family of 5 who were all on board. The captain's 22-year-old daughter Angela issued a heartfelt plea, "Papa, come home. I still need you. Papa, please come home." AirAsia Captain Irianto had more than 20,000 flying hours, and the plane had passed its safety check last month. The aerial search for the twin-engined airliner was called off when darkness fell. The oil slicks and floating debris spotted by searchers today were ruled unrelated to the missing aircraft. At least 30 ships, along with local fishing boats, are searching an area that is already the size of California. The head of Indonesia's search and rescue operation said he believed the plane was most likely at the bottom of the sea. AirAsia's CEO Tony Fernandez said it was pointless to speculate on what might have gone wrong.
There's a deep sense of depression here, but we'll stay strong. And our first priority now is to look after the families.
But there have been few details about what might have happened, and relatives are increasingly frustrated as they wait in vain for any news. As the search resumes today, the area will be widened, and the director of Indonesia's search and rescue operation said that they will send teams out as soon as weather permits to check on reports of smoke coming from an island in the search area. Nora?
All right, Alan Pizzi, thank you. So tonight the question remains, what went wrong? Transportation correspondent Jeff Pegues has been piecing together the final moments of the flight.
AirAsia Flight 8501 asked for permission to climb when the plane encountered bad weather over the Java Sea. The request was made at 6:12 a.m. while the plane was flying at 32,000 feet. The pilot wanted to go to 38,000 feet. But an Indonesian transport official said that request was denied because of traffic. At 6:24 a.m., AirAsia said radar contact was lost. Mark Rosenker is the former chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board.
How often is weather a factor in plane crashes?
Weather can be a serious factor, but it is never the single cause of what ultimately created the accident. Accidents are always a chain of events.
In addition to weather, investigators will also look at airspeed. Was the plane going too slow? Mechanical failure, and how the pilots may have reacted to an emergency on board. The airline said the captain had more than 6,000 hours flying the Airbus A320. The co-pilot had 2,200 hours of flying experience with the airline. And AirAsia itself has a good safety record. The search for AirAsia 8501 comes 9 months after Malaysia Air Flight 370 dropped off radar with 239 people on board. Investigators believe that plane was deliberately turned off course and ended up in the vast and deep southern Indian Ocean off the coast of Australia. The search so far for the Air Asia flight has been focused on areas around the Java Sea, where the waters aren't as deep, around 150 feet. Aviation sources say the plane was equipped with the flight data tracking system known as ACARS. It can feed diagnostic information about the plane to the ground in real time. What is not clear, Nora, is if Flight 8501 was using that system at the time of its disappearance.
All right, Jeff Pegues, thank you. Now, despite this incident and the Malaysia Airlines tragedies, 2014 ranks as the safest year ever for air travel. Counting Flight 8501, there have been 20 fatal airliner accidents this year. That is the fewest since records were first kept in 1942. Tonight, passengers rescued from a burning ferry off the coast of Albania are describing their terrifying wait for help. Many were pelted with rain even as flames poured out from below deck. Hundreds were rescued, but at least 10 were killed. Elizabeth Palmer has more.
Helicopter crews winched passengers one after another to safety after an ordeal that had lasted over 30 terrifying hours. Fire broke out on the ferry's car deck early Sunday morning, and emergency vessels battled heavy seas and strong winds to pour water on the Norman Atlantic as passengers, their feet burning from the flames below, huddled outside in the cold. This survivor managed to record video showing an entire deck ablaze. British passenger Nick Channing-Williams, covered in oil and soot, explained in a phone call how relieved he was to be safe.
There was moments where he was absolutely terrified, but you know, when the flames are licking up around the boat and there's just no sign of help.
Some people escaped into life rafts and were picked up by passing ships. Others, including a mother with her children, were airlifted to safety. But survivors reported widespread confusion on board.
Sorry, it was no alarm, no communication, nobody to tell us what to do. I had to look for myself to find life jackets.
At least 400 people made it back to shore alive, many suffering from hypothermia and smoke inhalation. Officials don't yet know what caused the fire, and to complicate matters, the ship's manifest wasn't accurate, so some passengers may still be missing. The Italian prosecutor's office has now opened an investigation into the fire. We do know, Nora, that the ferry was last inspected just 10 days ago, and although it was considered seaworthy, there were 6 so-called deficiencies found, some having to do with the safety equipment.
All right, Elizabeth Palmer, thank you. Tonight, a political speech delivered 12 years ago is getting new attention because of who delivered it and his audience, a group founded by a former leader of the Ku Klux Klan. Wyatt Andrews has that story.
The Senate refuses to act.
Today, Steve Scalise is the House Majority Whip, the third highest-ranking Republican. But in May of 2002, his office confirms that Scalise, when serving in the Louisiana legislature, spoke to a convention of the white supremacist group called Euro, a group devoted to what it called white civil rights and whose president was David Duke, the former leader of the Ku Klux Klan. According to a statement from his office, Scalise has never been affiliated with the abhorrent group in question. In 2002, it says, Scalise was speaking to hundreds of different groups on state issues, including slush funds that wasted millions of taxpayer dollars and his opposition to a proposed tax increase. In Louisiana's political circles, Scalise is known as a prolific speaker, but the Euro Group's affiliation with David Duke and its anti-Jewish, anti-minority messages were promoted and well known in 2002. Scalise's office insists he had no idea he was speaking to a David Duke group and would not have gone had he known. But Nora, for a Republican Party trying to reach out to minorities this year, this could hurt.
All right, Wyatt Andrews, thank you. Today, the LAPD released an autopsy of a young black man who was shot during a confrontation with police. The man who was shot was said to be mentally ill, and the shooting in August sparked outrage in the community. John Blackstone has the latest.
Hands up! Don't shoot! For months, demonstrators in Los Angeles have been demanding the release of Ezell Ford's autopsy, which police say they were keeping sealed while searching for more witnesses. According to police, the 25-year-old was shot when he tried to take an officer's gun. The autopsy shows Ford was hit 3 times at close range. 2 fatal shots in his right side and back. A third shot struck his arm. Los Angeles Police Chief Charlie Beck.
The officer's account is of a violent struggle where one officer ended up on his back with Mr. Ford on top of him, with Mr. Ford in control of his pistol, his uniform pistol. The officer drew his backup gun and reached over Mr. Ford's back and shot Mr. Ford in very close proximity.
Ford was described by his family as bipolar and schizophrenic. A witness, Ashanti Harrison, contradicts the police description of a struggle.
He put his hands up like that, and they wrestled him to the ground, and then the shot went off, and then they shot him again, and then another 2 seconds later, they shot him again.
Ford's family has filed a $75 million wrongful death suit against the LAPD and the city of Los Angeles. The suit claims the police officers were familiar with Ford and aware that he was mentally ill. Stephen Lehrman is the family's attorney.
They knew that this man was unarmed. They knew that he was basically helpless and harmless, and yet they proceeded to attack him, bring him to the ground, and shoot and kill him.
The autopsy is one element to be used in 3 separate investigations now underway into Ford's death. Nora, the 2 officers involved, both the veterans of the gang squad, have been taken off street duty.
All right, John Blackstone, thank you. Also in Los Angeles, 2 men opened fire on a police car responding to a call late last night. Neither officer in the car was hurt. They did return fire and 1 suspect was arrested soon after. The second suspect got away despite a massive search. The LAPD has no motive for the shooting, calling it completely unprovoked. In New York, there was tension in the air today as the mayor and police commissioner welcomed hundreds of new officers to the force. Don Dahler has our report.
Freeze it! 884 cadets joined the police department in crisis. 9 days after the murders of 2 of their fellow officers, there have been 66 additional threats against officers and 10 arrests. There was a smattering of boos as Mayor Bill de Blasio took to the podium. A few in the audience of thousands turned their backs on him, just as officers did on 2 other occasions over the past weeks. De Blasio repeatedly voiced appreciation for the police.
It takes a special kind of person to put their lives on the line for others, to stare down the danger, because that's what you will do. You will stare down the danger.
But the resentment towards this mayor has a long history. He campaigned on ending the controversial stop and frisk program against the wishes of the NYPD. He called the grand jury's decision not to indict an officer in the death of an unarmed Staten Island man astonishing, and publicly stated he worries about the safety of his biracial son in dealings with police. Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams is a former cop.
Everyone needs to take a step back, utilize this opportunity of our 2 slain officers, and build around ensuring that all lives matter.
The rift has cast Police Commissioner Bill Bratton in the role of peacemaker between his rank and file and his boss.
We resolve our differences, but even while we do that, we will keep this city safe.
Both the mayor and the police unions, some of which are in difficult contract negotiations with the city, tell us they will not comment until after the funeral of Officer Wen-Jin Liu. Nora, that funeral is scheduled for Sunday.
All right, Don Dahler, thank you. And tonight, officials in Castle Hills, Texas, near San Antonio, are said to be working feverishly to account for 80 residents after fire swept through a senior citizen's home. 5 people were killed in yesterday's fire. 17 others were sent to hospitals. City officials say it is possible that many of those missing were with family for the holidays. No word yet on what caused the fire. And coming up, Sony has a hit, even though its new movie isn't seen on most theater screens. And make room for the commander-in-chief, why a bride and groom had to change their wedding plans, when the CBS Evening News continues. In spite of everything, The Interview is earning money for Sony Pictures. The comedy about a plot to kill North Korea's dictator was pulled from theaters after threats from hackers. So has Sony stumbled onto a new model for distributing films? Here's Elaine Quijano.
We're going to open the doors at about 12:10.
Moviegoers came to theaters showing the interview this weekend with a patriotic defiance not often seen in a sophomoric comedy.
I wasn't planning to see it, but no tin horn dictator is going to tell me what second-rate comedy I can't go and see.
Hello, North Korea!
The box office bravado was more than matched online. The film has brought in more than $15 million in digital downloads and nearly $3 million from just 300 theaters.
You could never dream this stuff up. This is stranger than fiction.
Box office analyst Paul Dergarabedian of the market research firm Rentrack says the online numbers came as a surprise.
Are we looking at a new business model when it comes to movie releases?
You're not going to see mainstream big studio movies released in this way. If you look at the interview and the circumstances surrounding its release, it is the very definition of an anomaly.
It looks like you hit the grocery store pretty often.
Despite the film's online performance, Dergarabedian believes studios are loath to go to digital distribution. While the interview performed well online, it had 1.5 to 2.5 million illegal downloads. While the interview's $18 million take was seen as a success, it paled in comparison to this week's box office winner, The Hobbit, which grossed $41 million. It's a lesson not lost on studios.
If you're going to spend a couple $100 million on a movie and its marketing, you have to have that theatrical experience. You have to have those revenues coming in from the theater, and then down the line at the appropriate time, having that online revenue coming into play.
As for the interview, Sony Pictures says in the first 4 days of the digital release, the film was rented or bought more than 2 million times. Sony says that makes it the studio's #1 online movie, Nora, of all time.
All right, Elaine Cajano, thank you. And they called this Black Monday in the NFL, and it lived up to its name. That's next. This is Black Monday in the NFL, the day after the regular season ends, and losing teams clean house. Today, the coaches of the Falcons, the Jets, and the Bears were all sacked. Yesterday, Jim Harbaugh parted ways with the 49ers. Former President George H.W. Bush could be released from a Houston hospital as soon as tomorrow. The 41st president was admitted last week for shortness of breath. A family spokesman said today Mr. Bush, who's 90 years old, is now breathing normally. In a moment, meet the men and women bringing class to a supposedly classless society. Finally tonight, with a booming economy, these are the days of wine and roses in China, at least for a privileged few. The question is, who's going to pour all that wine? Seth Doan found out when he visited the Butler Academy.
Till we get this right, gloves.
They're learning the finer points of life, and finding no detail is too small.
The name tag should be aligned with the pocket.
At this boot camp for butlers.
What are the most challenging things to teach? Etiquette, table service?
Yes, yes, and yes, yes. Table service, etiquette. It's just culturally we're different.
Polish those glasses. I need them on the table now.
Chengdu is a long way from Cleveland, where Christopher Noble grew up.
Let's go, guys. Come on, hurry up.
Now he's teaching at the International Butler Academy of China.
It's the demand because of the influence of the West that's coming here to China. They want the Western service.
It's easier to teach a Chinese the trade of a butler than to train a butler in Mandarin or Cantonese. After the amuse-bouche, we are going to serve a corn soup.
Thomas Kaufman from Switzerland is in charge of this 6-week, often 14-hour-a-day program.
These aren't right.
This day culminates in a formal dinner for friends of real estate mogul Tsai Ling-yu.
The second.
She's bankrolling the academy and popped by early to check on the preparations.
This doesn't seem like Mao's communist China.
China has developed rapidly, and the demand for service is getting stronger, she says. We're not negating Chairman Mao, but we need to keep the good part and remove the bad parts of his views.
Is that not polished?
As dinner time approaches, tensions rise.
Are you kidding me?
Simon, a 25-year-old butler-to-be, says Western dining may be elegant, but he'd feel uncomfortable at a table like this. For us Chinese, all it takes is a pair of chopsticks, he says. For Western, you've got the knife, the fork. It just doesn't seem casual.
How's dinner going? Overall, it's going okay. There's been a couple hiccups.
What were the hiccups?
Generally on the guest part.
We saw the carefully measured mise en place cast aside to make room for cell phones, and more than a few texts were sent from the table. It seems lessons in etiquette may be needed by more than just the butlers. Seth Doan, CBS News, Chengdu, China.
What an interesting look. And that is the CBS Evening News. For Scott Pelley, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and I'll see you tomorrow on CBS This Morning. Good night.